Meanwhile, of course, City are taking on Arsenal this weekend in the Community Shield. We heard Arteta speaking ahead of that game. James inevitably is asked about transfer activity. What did he say about it?
Well, I mean, he made the right noises, that they've obviously been in the conversations for a number of players, and they are actively at the moment with Jarell, Quansah and Ezri, Konsa, the two England internationals, of course, are engaged in Thomas Tuchel's squad for the World Cup. Particularly of focus for them at the moment. But I thought it was really interesting, actually. It was the piece I did for the site in the end about how he expressed his surprise about the size of some of the transfers that are going on this summer. Of course, there's 4 players who've moved for £100 million or more. One of them was Morgan Rogers, who was a player that Arsenal were after for several months. And they were trying to lowball Villa for a long time. They didn't feel that the £117 million price tag was a fair reflection of Morgan Rogers' talent. No disrespect to him, he's obviously had a fantastic season, he's a great player, but they felt there was a premium attached to that. And of course Chelsea came in and said, bang, here's the money, and it was pretty much guaranteed. I don't think there's a lot, if any, performance related payments within that. And Arteta, talking to us today, was sort of saying, well, look, I've been surprised you wouldn't have bet on these kind of players going for these kind of prices. So look, I mean, there's still time, of course. They've got, 2.5 weeks, and I think everybody knows Arsenal need to strengthen. They're in this sort of curious position, Arsenal, I think, that most people have them as title favourites, and yet I think everybody knows that they need to improve their squad. I think particularly in the forward line, of course, they were linked with Vinicius Junior. They were sort of there waiting in the wings, if you like, if he couldn't have negotiated a new deal with Real Madrid. And they're kind of doing something similar now with Bradley Barcola at PSG. And Andrea Berta, the sporting director, has this modus operandi where he'll negotiate multiple deals at the same time and sort of put Arsenal in the position to go and pull the trigger on the one they want to do. And that's great, and it has worked for them in the past. But if you keep putting yourself in those positions, then you don't get that big deal over the line. It does start to ask a few questions of how you're approaching it. So I think they still need 1 or 2 more, really. And I think if they got a defender in, maybe I think for me personally, Konsa a little bit more than Quansah, if I had to pick between the two. And then they need I think a top class winger, and maybe a centre forward. We could have the Victor Gyökeres debate again if you want. I think we've probably had it 20 times during the course of last season. But I think they need to bolster that forward line. If they get those 2 in, then I think they're clear favourites. But you just got that sense from Arteta today that he talked a big game after the Champions League final about how they needed to be ambitious, they needed to be bold and brave in the market, and we haven't quite seen it yet. Bruno Guimaraes signing, I think, is a very good one, but they have more to do.
Konsa or Quansah?
I mean, it's really close. I think if you're looking for a like for like with Saliba, I would actually say Quansah more.
Really?
Because I think he's got more the physical presence. He's more of an engaging centre-back that can then recover if there's a mistake. And I think Konsa's more of someone who likes to see the game in front of him and be less aggressive to the ball, and we have that with Gabriel. So I would say Quansah's younger, less experienced in the Premier League, and obviously they're going to need someone that's going to come in and be ready-made. I think Marley Salmon has really impressed me over pre-season, but being 16, you can't ask him to come in and.
How old are you, Kieran? You were young, though, weren't you?
I was 17, but I wasn't. He was
mature. He was a mature 17.
Yes.
But you got to be careful with the young ones. But no, you got to be careful with the young ones because, I always get haunted with players like Jack Wilshere who came in 2010 and had to play 40 games, and then you run you can get run into the ground and you get injury problems. So these players have to be eased in at the right time. 16's not the time to come in and cover the world's best centre-back.
Yesterday we talked about the rules changes that are going to be implemented this season. A lot of them about time wasting. Some suggesting that Arsenal's tactics last season triggered that. Shaka said that. This is what Arteta said. When the rules change, everything changes. The game evolves, so we'll see a change there as well for sure. Brilliant. Great. Thanks for that, Mikel. Kieran?
I'm in favour of the changes.
They're good, aren't they? We were talking about them yesterday. Like it works in the World Cup, everything moving quicker.
Yeah, anything to do with speeding up the game.
But is that going to hinder your boys, considering the time you wasted last season?
one season of it.
Boy.
One season of it, and we get absolutely peppered. I can't believe it. But no, listen. I think, anything to do with speeding up the game, especially with VAR at the moment. When it comes to that slowing down the game, we have to find these ways to keep the flow of the game. I think it's really important. I'm a big fan of these.
Let's stay in North London, James. Dangerous times, isn't it, for Spurs fans? Because some of them seem optimistic.
Yeah, that's the hope that kills you, isn't it? No, I mean they've obviously splashed the cash, haven't they? And they've done what I think. You've got to put this in the context of the last, you could say, 20 odd years, where Tottenham fans have been desperate to see their club be aggressive in the market and not have their transfer approach be sort of proportionate to their income or to their wage bill. It's been very aggressive. I mean, you can see the huge sums there. I mean, the idea that Spurs would spend 100 million quid on a midfielder even 2 years ago, you'd have been laughed out of town for even suggesting it. So, look, I mean, they've addressed key areas of the team. I think they know. They obviously, they narrowly avoided relegation last season. They know they're miles off it in terms of the squad, and clearly, it's not just in terms of quality; it's the mentality of this squad as well. They need to reshape the leadership group. They need to find a core group of players who want to play for that club. Christian Romero, of course, is not in that graphic because he's now finally agreed a deal to go to Atletico Madrid. And one of the things that Roberto De Zerbi was trying to do at the end of last season was really sort of begin to foster that togetherness. And I remember being at one of those games near the end of the season where there were players like James Maddison who weren't available, Vicario, the goalkeeper, who was out injured, and he had them just behind the dugout. And it was sort of trying to make them part of the squad when they couldn't be part of the team. And yet Christian Romero, the club captain, was up in the stands, miles away from the rest of them. And he just sort of thought, what kind of message does that send about where Romero is and how fractured this dressing room is? And that's a massive problem for Tottenham. And spending the money is one thing, and they need to show that intent. Obviously, we could get into the whole conversation about how the club was almost sold under Daniel Levy, and these owners are now there and they've got a club that they didn't expect to have, and what are they going to do with it? And I think they've had to show that intent to the supporters, that they can talk about in statements, that yes, we're committed and we're long-term investors and long-term custodians and whatever, but you really need to show that in the market. And to be fair to them, they have done that so far. I still think it's incomplete. I think if you look at that squad at the top end of the pitch, it's still quite weak. But, we look at that squad 2 months ago and we just said central midfield was a major problem, and they have addressed that area. I think Van Hecker is a very good signing for them at centre-back as well. The fact that they've managed to keep Van der Ven, not many people saw that coming, I'd say, at the back end of the season. So you start to look at the spine of the team, and they've clearly backed Kinski, and he's had a lot of criticism for what happened at the Atletico Madrid game last season, but they backed him in goal. They've got that core now of those centre-backs and those centre midfielders. Solanke, I think, is decent up top. I think the wide areas are the problem. If they can have a positive next couple of weeks, they're talking about Savinho, maybe Cody Gakpo as well. If they can get those two in, you do start to look at Spurs and think, well, we can think of them like we used to think of them, which is top 6, maybe top 4. Let's see how they go. But it's an awful long way back. And I think what had happened really at Spurs is, coming back to that culture point, is that a rot had really set in. They'd accepted losing. And it started in the second half of that season where they ended up winning the Europa League, where they said, well, look, actually the Premier League doesn't really matter that much because we're tailoring everything to Europe. And and the guys in the studio, obviously, you'll know far better than me, but to turn that tap back on and suddenly say, no, the standards are high every week and every game matters and we won't let standards drop. That's De Zerbi's biggest task, really. But signing those big players and making those statements in the market will obviously only help.
You got mates in this Spurs squad, Kieran. What are they saying ahead of the season?
They're optimistic. I mean, as James said, off the back of last season, I think they had no choice, really, but to repay something back to the club. And they've gone out and spent big money on again, ready-made players. So I think it's a genuine attempt to reset the level of the team. But But yeah, I mean, obviously with James Maddison coming back as well, he had a really difficult year. I'm sure he's firing to go, and I think that they look better than what I thought that they were going to be at this stage. Yeah, I'm surprised that they've gone big, 190 million on two midfielders. I'm surprised they've gone that big. But like I said, they had no choice.
What about Folarin Balogun? You talk about lack of attacking options. Could he be one, James?
Yeah, it's difficult to know the level of truth in that at the moment. From what I've been told, I think there is a degree of interest, but it's not close. There's nothing imminent. I mean, play this back to me tomorrow when he signs and he's doing the shirt unveiling. But as far as I know, there's nothing kind of active there. I think maybe towards the end of the window, as Spurs narrow down their options, if they feel he's viable, he could be a good fit. Quite how that would go down in the red half of North London, Kieran, you probably know better than me.
You don't see it too often, do you?
No, but still, Monaco, Spurs. Thank you very much. James, can I ask you a question?
Go on.
Are your candlestick holders the same size?
They were when they started.
No, but the one on the left looks bigger than the one on the right. Look at it.
All right.
Put them together.
We're going to do this. Let's do this.
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Ready?
Okay. What do we reckon?
Oh.
I'm holding them even now.
Higher. Oh, the actual holders. There you go.
I should have done the whole show like this, shouldn't I?
Yeah, exactly. The Museum of Illusions. I did that in New York. Don't bother. Waste the money. Thank you very much, James. Much appreciated. Just a reminder, James will be with us throughout the whole season. And it all starts this weekend. Arsenal taking on Manchester City in the Community Shield. That's live, 9:30 Eastern on ESPN Plus and ESPN2. And the game kicks off at 10 on ESPN.